Alison Gowman, we now come to the interview that the Glovers have all been looking forward to, possibly all of their lives. It's me talking to you, asking you some questions. Alison Gowman, city grandee, alderman, livery past master, top city lawyer, etc., etc., etc. I think we all know who you are now. We know the person that we see at the livery lunches, but tell us about your early life, please, so we can get a feel for you.
Well, John, you may well wonder, how on earth did she make it after that interesting or uninteresting start? But I'm not ashamed. I was born in Essex, John. I was born in Braintree in Essex. Yes, I know, all those Essex girl jokes. But the secret to it all is that my father he's sadly now deceased, was a Methodist minister. And those of you who know anything about Methodism, you will know perhaps that Methodist ministers tend to go about on circuit and move around every so often. So I started my life in Braintree, and then at the age of 5, I moved to Devon. But a very exciting time in my early life was that my father went to work in California in the States. So I spent a year in the States and have had a great love for that lovely country. And then I moved to Dartford in Kent. And it was in Dartford that I spent the whole of my senior school at Dartford Grammar School for Girls. So that's my start in life, a very happy family background with one sister, and a family life that was pretty ideal, frankly, fairly unremarkable, but most enjoyable.
And after that exciting beginning, you then decided to go all the way north to Durham to study law. So what made you decide that law was the thing that was going to become part of your life?
Well, why Durham as well? I think it was to get as far away from home as possible, really. I went for the interview in the depth of winter in a train strike and actually had to come back by coach in the snow, but I loved Durham. I chose law because, I don't know, I think it was one of those topics that sounded exciting, interesting, different, intriguing. I was a fan, of course, of Crown Court, lunchtimes on ITV in my childhood, and thought I'd be that super duper lawyer. And it really just appealed to me as an intriguing topic. And frankly, I also thought I could make a living out of it. And frankly, I wanted a career as a woman. And very soon I thought I wanted a career as a lawyer in the city. And Durham and law was my passport to that.
So having decided that you wanted this exciting and intriguing career, as you've described it, and I'm sure every other lawyer would describe it the same, why did you go to London rather than Devon or even California?
Yes, it was really bizarre in a sense, because my father didn't particularly have a great interest in the city, but one Saturday morning he said to me, let's go to the Lord Mayor's show. And literally we set off. It was only a 30-minute train ride. And I remember standing on a raised flower bed near Mansion House Station. I had to be on the raised flower bed because I'm so short. Everybody knows that. And I just enjoyed it. It was just such a buzz. And I can't say, and I won't say, oh gosh, I was going to be that man or that woman in the carriage as Lord Mayor, but it really gave me a buzz for somewhere where something was happening, something was different. It had an energy and excitement, and I just wanted to work in the city thereafter as a lawyer.
So that explains why you came to the city, and it also slightly explains, doesn't it, your involvement in Common Council, which you stood for in 1991. But what made you do that, apart from this desire possibly to be in that coach one day?
Well, John, as a partner at my firm, now DLA Piper, as a partner, I had a vote in the city in this very sort of ancient and slightly quirky way that the City of London Corporation is elected. And because I had a vote, I was being tackled every year to go out and vote for people standing. And I got interested in the whole process and realised how exciting it would be for me to be part of it. And when there was a vacancy in the ward of Dowgate, which is where I was working at the time, somebody said to me, Alison, why don't you stand? And I've got to say, it wasn't a driving passion. It was really quite a casual conversation. And at the time, you only stood for a year. So it didn't really matter. You know, I could stand for a year, and I didn't like it, I wouldn't stand again. But I got the bug. I stood, I had a contest, I got elected. And as soon as you get involved in that whole area, you see you can really make a difference. In my time, I lobbied to get a zebra crossing in my ward, because it was really important to be able to cross the particularly busy Upper Thames Street to get over to the south side of the ward. And I've suddenly thought, if I make the point, I can hopefully lobby and get stuff done. And that's quite exciting.
Having been on Common Council for 11 years, and I know what a serious commitment that is, you then decided to stand as an alderman in 2002, totally aware of the ghastly workload that an alderman has, and you were pretty busy already. Why on earth did you do that?
Well, John, you know, the alderman that was retiring at the time had been there for 28 years. And I did think to myself, I'm not going to wait 28 years to become an alderman. In fact, he asked me, was I interested in taking on the role? And I thought, yes, I do. I do want to be an alderman. And the alderman does lead to a different rule, a different route in life. But I thought, no, now is the time. And in a sense, you're right. I had to make some sacrifices of other areas of work. I didn't take on lots of management roles within my firm, but I remained a partner for several years at my firm, but juggled. It helped I live in the city, because you can then do an awful lot more when you're not having to travel in from way out. I could walk home at night and be home in 10 minutes from most events. And it was possible to juggle all of that if one were dedicated, interested, and frankly organised.
And the slight bonus of being on Common Council and being an alderman is that you go to a great number of city banquets and dinners. So what was the most memorable of those that you've been to?
Oh, John, so many dinners, as you say. I think most of them are memorable because of who I sat with or who I met at the time. There was one amazing dinner in 1995 celebrating 40 years from the end of the Second World War, when we had 50 heads of state. Oh my gosh. And I was deputed to look after the president of Azerbaijan, which was really interesting. And I must say, I learned a lot about Azerbaijan that evening. Or another dinner, I sat next to Bob Geldof. I've even sat next to the Duke of Edinburgh twice. A complete privilege and most memorable. But if you really want me to remember my best banquet ever, it has to be my banquet when I was Master Glover in the Mansion House. My guest of honour was Joan Collins, and obviously I sat next to her. But it was just an absolute ball of an evening. I had met her a few times before she came to be my guest, but she was sparkling company, talking to me about her son and his girlfriend and what did I think of her. It was just amazing, and I really enjoyed it. And I hope every one of the Glovers that came, I hope you enjoyed it as well.
We sure did. And nothing beats that feeling of sitting in the big chair at Mansion House, does it? Thinking, yes, this is my night. Alison, what drives you on in the city, though? Because it's all work and no pay. And apart from those dinners, there's got to be something else, hasn't there?
Well, I touched on it earlier, that actually you can get things done, you can make a difference. I absolutely love the ability, or the interest in putting people together, getting things done. One of my businesses in the ward was really annoyed that there was a noisy manhole just right outside their office, and reported it to me. And I'm pleased to say I got it fixed that day by the city's engineers, and they were forever grateful to me. So it's that sort of buzz that you get, that something straightforward that should be able to be fixed, you can organise. I mean, that's at perhaps, the most sort of ordinary level, but putting people together in organisations. My my most recent area of work around climate change has meant I'm putting together all the livery companies that want to get involved in how they can respond to climate change and the city's climate action strategy. And that's really been exciting, because so many livery members have come forward and they're huge experts in very different, diverse, interesting areas. And I hope we're going to make a difference. And that's the joy of bringing everybody together in this way.
Alison, thank you for that. We'll touch on climate change shortly, but you've been on an awful lot of committees, a real lot of committees, and governance, standards, innovation and improvement feature in an awful lot of them. So are you a stickler for rules and boundaries? Do you read the Black Book a lot, for instance?
Now, you know, John, I have frequently read the Black Book and made some helpful comments to you about how it could be improved. Yes, of course, I'm a lawyer. I like rules. I like the structure, but the structure is just the framework. Once you've got that sorted out, working within it and occasionally outside of it means that you can really, you can get on with stuff without having to worry about it. So I'm not a stickler for rules, although it's fair to say I am a magistrate and I try not to break the law, even driving, because I do think it's important that laws are there to make everybody behave properly and set a standard. But it's not the be all and end all, because actually what's important is what you can achieve through it.
Thank you. I was going to ask you if you like to break the rules. You having said that you're a magistrate and it is rather essential that you stick to the rules, I don't think I'll ask you that. So I'll move on to ask you about the most obviously important committee that you chaired, the City Bridge Trust. Tell us a bit about the City Bridge Trust.
John, the City Bridge Trust is such a fantastic story, and really I haven't got time to do all of it justice, but suffice to say the money that's being given away every year through the City Bridge Trust in the city, and it's about 25 million pounds a year, this committee that I have chaired, it all comes from money that Londoners paid towards the new London Bridge back in the 12th century. And it's such a great story of Londoners donating to a communal use, the bridge, which was so important to the trade of the city, and then investing the money. It didn't get, frittered away. And so 1.4 billion pounds sits in this fund that's used for the bridges and then for charity across Greater London, helping those who are most deprived, seeking to create greater equality across London and to help those who are most disadvantaged. It was just a wonderful time. And that charity is really just a supreme example of the philanthropy that the city does, the livery does, individuals do. I was so privileged to be part of it.
And now you're part of climate action, which is the flavour of the month, if not the flavour of the decade or the flavour of the millennium. Do tell us more about that one, Alison.
Well, John, I've had a long track record of being involved in sustainability issues. I like to think ahead of the curve in this. And I've been really talking about issues around sustainability for many, many years. It's fair to say the City Corporation hasn't always seen that as a very important aspect, but finally they got it. We launched a green finance initiative, realizing that in order to become a greener economy, people need money. And part of that can come from private investment through the city's great depths of capitals from banks, insurance companies, investment houses. So finally, the city's got it. And they also know they need to green the infrastructure actually in the square mile. And so my latest idea around climate action is to get the livery companies to respond as well. And so many of them are already very much involved, the water conservators, the fuelers. It's absolutely great. And don't worry, I'll be coming to the Glovers soon to see what we need to be doing, greening our investments, which we are already looking at, to be fair. But also, how does the glove industry work? Is that as green as it should be? Is there a way in which we can make that more sustainable?
Thank you, Alison. I'm sure that the Glovers will be getting greener and greener as a result of your involvement. And if they're not, I'm sure you're going to be on them like a ton of bricks. Which leads us cunningly into livery companies, the bit of this talk that most people watching might actually understand now. You're a member of many, and you've been past master of two, the Glovers and the Plasterers, or the Plaisterers, and you can explain which is which if you like in a minute. The Glovers are your mother company, but you only joined in 1999, which was quite a long time after you got onto Common Council, which was a bit unusual. So why the wait and why the Glovers? I mean, very sensible choice, but why did you choose the Glovers?
I'm so delighted. They were the first livery company that asked me. It was Elizabeth Rogers, now married Elizabeth Holliday, who asked me, would I like to become a Glover? She was the predecessor chair of the City of London School for Girls, and I became her successor. And she asked me, I think livery companies back in the 90s even were not really looking out for new members. Whereas now I'm pleased to say that the Glovers are looking out for members. And I think people like me working in the city, obviously interested in the city and through Common Council, it's clearly an important part of my life. People should be asking people, and sometimes perhaps we just don't ask the right people. But I've never doubted a day that I joined up to be a Glover, even though at the time I'd done no due diligence. I hadn't even thought about which one I should choose.
Well, you made a lucky and very sensible choice, and we bless the day you came our way to be a Glovery lady. So how would you, and think carefully before you answer this, how would you define the Glovers, Alison? Don't think too deeply.
Well, I mean, I've got to say that I have now experienced a lot more livery companies, and I have got to say I would describe the Glovers in a fairly perhaps oft used word, but extremely friendly. I think they're extremely open. And I think that they almost every livery person in their own right, absolutely, personifies volunteering, getting involved, giving of themselves. Just this very recording today, it's being run by people who have given their time in their own right, their own expertise as well, thank goodness, and are putting this together to present to the Glovers in an event in May. And that you don't see that across the livery. People talk about it, but it's actually embodied in how the Glovers operate. And that's a really powerful tool because we're doing so many good things as the Glovers Livery Company.
Perfect answer, Alison. Thank you very much indeed. As master, you did rather more travel than most, didn't you?
Well, yes, I like travel, and it seemed to me if I could travel to do something about the Glovers, it was a great way to frankly promote the Glovers Livery Company. And in Mike Redwood, liveryman Mike Redwood, I had a great guide because he is part of the international leather trade and promotes leather and gloves. So I went with him and with also now past master Anne Esselmont, who was my successor master Glover. I went to Addis Ababa in Ethiopia to the All Africa Leather Fair to see where glove leather, which comes from Ethiopian hair sheep, to see it in the raw state, i.e. running around the fields on the back of sheep. And that was a great experience. And also to see the tanning factory and the glove factories that Pittards have set up in Addis Ababa. And the following year, I went to the All China Leather Fair in Shanghai. Another amazing experience at the other end of the scale, which was so high-tech and massively large compared to the relatively small event in Addis Ababa.
So I'm just beginning to wonder whether Richard Morris is beginning to rethink the fact that he's master of the livery and he's got to try and outdo you. No one is going to outdo you in travel. Most masters think they're pushing the boat out a bit to go down to the West Country or up to Liverpool. Outside of work, the city, the law and the livery, which is effectively the area that you can see from your Barbican Airy as you look out in the morning with a cup of coffee. You're a committed Methodist. How has Methodism impacted on your life, Alison? It's been part of your life forever, and you could so easily have rebelled against it.
Well, John, somebody once said, I've got Methodism stamped through me like a stick of rock. And it's true, I have mostly in my life been part of a Methodist church. I mean, what I enjoy about it, or why I'm committed to being a Methodist, is that they're part of the church that is full of action. And I suppose that's part of how I feel that I want to be active in all I do. Particularly in regards to social involvement, social engagement. My church runs a hostel for homeless people. It runs care homes for people with alcoholic and drink problems. And to me, that's what, you know, my belief is about, which is actually helping people, engaging with people. And that's why I've stayed true to being a Methodist, because I think it's a way in which I can actually get engaged. And as well as being a family, of course, I've said to you, my father was a Methodist minister, so it is a bit ingrained in that way, but it's not inherited. It's something that I believe for myself as well.
Well, it's great that you've taken it on yourself rather than feeling that you've got to do it because your dad did it. And it's typical of you that when you get into something, you get into it in a seriously big way and don't just sit at the back mouthing the hymns. You're up there doing stuff, aren't you? And away from London, your interests are cross-country skiing, which is something I vaguely understand, and Romney Tweed, which does warrant a bit more explanation. So could you go on a bit about Romney Tweed?
Yes, okay, this is a slightly interesting story, which I won't go into great length, but Romney Tweed Community Interest Company is a company that I'm a director of, that was set up a few years ago in order to make tweed cloth out of the wool from Romney sheep. And I realize now that's the second time I've mentioned sheep in this discussion. So from the leather on the sheep to the wool on the Romney sheep. And we've proved that the wool from Romney sheep can be woven, can be treated, obviously all of the very many treatments that are required, into very good wearable tweed cloth. And John, I'm now going to give you an exclusive here, actually, because over the last few weeks and months, I have been working with my own company I'm a director of, in order to design an Old Bailey tweed design cloth. So if you'd like me to show you, here
Yes,
is
please.
the Old Bailey tweed cloth. And the colours are meant to reflect, well, they're reflecting me, to be honest. Purple for Durham, red and white, obviously the city colours, and yellow and black for my college, Van Mildert. So wait to see this on me and on various other items. And I'm certainly hoping to be able to make a pair of tweed back gloves. Well, when I say I'm going to make them, I'm afraid somebody else, I hope, will make them for me. And they may well be on sale. So what we're trying to do is regenerate the Romney Marsh area, which is fairly economically deprived, by bringing back the idea of tweed cloth in the Romney area and selling it to promote the area and to promote the sheep there.
Well, thank you for explaining that. I look forward to seeing the judges at the Old Bailey wearing their new tweedy robes instead of that red stuff that they wear at the moment. It's going to be most exciting. I've seen, I do know Romney Marsh, obviously, because I've been shooting there with the army, and there's an awful lot of sheep. There are an awful lot of sheep there, and they taste very nice. And it's nice to know that their wool is actually going to be used sensibly as well. Reverting to rules, you've written the amazingly informative and helpful book called The City of London, who, what, why. Advert.
Snap, Ron, snap.
How did that come about, and where can I buy another copy, Alison?
I'd be absolutely pleased to hand this one over to you right now.
Wow, thank you very much.
I wrote the book as a result of writing individual articles to tell the Plasterers Livery Company what the city was all about, because like a lot of livery companies, a lot of people don't always understand all of the nuances. And so writing a chapter a month over 5 years, actually, for the Plasterers, I had a lot of information and put it all together in the book. So the book is an amalgam of chapters of interest with some actually rather good photographs, I like to think. So it's easy to read, it's easy to look at. It's an enjoyable dipping into and out of book, especially for new freemen, new liverymen, and for old freemen and liverymen who maybe want to have a brush up. So you can get it from me. I'm afraid it's not been syndicated. Email me and it's £10 plus a bit of postage.
Well, Alison, I've got to tell you, it's worth a damn sight more than £10. And for someone that's been involved in the city for 40 odd years, I learned a lot from this, and I'm really impressed with it. I don't want to sound patronising, but it is bloody good. And if anybody watching this hasn't got a copy, they should buy one. And they should also buy one for their mum and their auntie and all their children. Which leads me on to ask, do you, probably not, but do you have any further city ambitions, Alison, at all, possibly?
Oh, well, John, I am calling the Tweed Old Bailey Tweed. So that is a little hint that I hope in June at Common Hall, I hope I will be elected one of the 2 sheriffs of the City of London for the year starting in September. And that will be a fantastic year. And I'm so thankful that the Glovers have already to date been so supportive of me in that ambition. And we're looking forward to having a great year together. Thereafter, ... who knows? I would very much like to be that person in that show.
Well, it would certainly enable your city life to come full circle, wouldn't it? Are you fairly positive about the Shreveport election this year? And it's going to be a rather weird Shreveport election, isn't it, anyway? This
year, due to the pandemic, we are hoping to have an in-person Common Hall, but it may well be only one person from each livery company. So instead of 1,000, it'll be 110.
Well, I shall be there with my mask on, rooting for you, along with the other 109 people. And I'm sure everybody watching this will be wishing you well. And finally, Alison, you can take one luxury with you on the desert island. What's it going to be?
John, this is really difficult, you know. I'm very privileged. I have so many things that to take one specially would be very difficult. I think my luxury is to have a good night's sleep. And it's not that I don't sleep very, very well, but I know that getting a good night's sleep means that I can be as active and busy the next day as I want to be. And that's my luxury, I think.
We shall make sure that you get it. Alison Gowman, you have been a great joy to interview. One take Gowman, they call you, I'm sure. Fantastic interview. Thank you very much indeed. And on behalf of the Glovers, I would like to give you a very hearty thank you very, very much.
Well, John, thank you for being so kind, generous, undemanding, but also pertinent in your questions. Thank you.